Hi, Andrew Klein. Today's video is going to take a look at how to create a simple pose for a character in ZBrush 4 using the new Zsphere rig features found in the Transpose Master tool. So first let's examine this character. It's a simple sculpt of a Minotaur that I've done. What I want to actually show you is the fact that this model, once I drop down to the lower resolutions here, actually has three separate subtools, the base model and also two eyeballs, the left eye and the right eye. Well, this is important because the Transpose Master tools actually only work when you have more than one subtool active, but of course that's also what they're really good for. They enable you to have posing across all of your subtools. So we could create a basic transpose using the move, scale, or rotate, or the transpose brush, which is essentially the same thing found in the brush palette on the left. These tools allow you to create an action line, which you can drag out like you see here. If I drag out while holding Control, ZBrush allows me to mask along that topology that I've already created. Then with the end of the action line and the rotate tool active, I can rotate and create a bend for the arm. Now this is simple, but there's a main drawback here, which is that I have to repaint this mask continuously to try and get what I need. So I can hold down Control and add to the mask while painting, or hold down Control and Alt and remove from the mask while I'm painting. That of course happens when I am hovering over the mesh itself. If I have my brush off the mesh while I'm doing this, and I try and create a mask, it will do it using a either rectangular or lasso stroke mask, or any of the other stroke masks as well. I can Control tap on the mask to blur it, or Control Alt tap to sharpen it. But still, I'm continuously recreating these masks, and there may be some errors as you see here on the torso. Another drawback of this method is that if I have multiple subtools engaged, such as here, where I have the eyes right inside the head, even if I draw out a really specific mask with the lasso stroke type, here I'll invert it, tap to blur it, draw out my action line and rotate, you'll notice that these subtools don't actually come with the major part of the model. So this is obviously a big problem, and this is what the Zsphere rig aims to solve in ZBrush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Z plugin Transpose Master subpalette. Now this is a plugin that has to be loaded. I'm going to hit the Zsphere rig button, which will activate right here, and then hit the T-pose mesh button. This is going to create a single unified mesh out of all of my parts. It's going to create an X-ray view and also add a Zsphere, which is ZBrush's native armature system, into the file. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure symmetry is on, which I can find under the transform palette, activate symmetry, or just hit X for symmetry. And I'm going to use the draw, move, scale, and rotate functions, which are hotkeys Q, W, E, and R respectively, to create new Z-spheres. So you'll notice here I drew out a new Z-sphere by activating the draw function and essentially extruding out by dragging my pen to the left. Now I then will move that all the way up, and once I do, I'll switch back to the draw tool and click on some Z-spheres in between. I then also resize them to match up to the silhouette of my model. This way the binding that takes place will be a little bit more correct, because the way that ZBrush handles this, it actually creates its binding based on proximity from the Z-sphere armature to the mesh itself. So here I'll create a tail by extruding out with the draw function all the way to the end, and then tapping on the link spheres along the way to essentially insert new edge loops or joints in the chain, however you want to think about it, creating these extra Z-spheres for posability. Now, while I'm on the move tool, if I click on the link spheres themselves, I move all of the joints in the chain, whereas if I click on just the Z-spheres, the anchor ones that we see here, I can nudge them without touching the rest of the chain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue this process, drawing out Z-spheres till I have a roughly complete skeleton in place using this armature system. drawing out the legs with the draw tool, switching to move it into place, and then switching back to the draw tool when I'm ready. And I'm sizing this up from the side first, and then either switching into the front or back view to make sure that it's fitting inside of that X-rayed mesh that we already have templated out. Now, the important part about this is if you've already created an armature, this process should be very familiar to you. The armatures themselves can be used to create a base sculpt for a character. And in this case, the character that you see here was actually created from a Zsphere and Zsketch setup. However, with the Transpose Master functionality, you can't actually reuse that same rig. If you have just a single mesh, there are ways to reuse that rig by binding it to the initial Zsphere chain, but unfortunately you'd have to recreate it here if you were doing this in Transpose Master. Now once I put this up into place, I'm going to go ahead and create joints for the hand. I'm not going to do every finger. In fact, I'm just going to do one finger and then one thumb. You'll see though, by doing that, all three of the fingers at the edge of the hand will actually come with what I create for the center finger when I rotate. So it'll be a very fast way of getting a rough deformation. I could create all the fingers and certainly get a good pose out of that. I'm just not doing that for time's sake here. You could also just do the one finger or so as you see here, and then use the transpose action line features I was showing previously to create a pose for the fingers after you create the main body pose. So once I have this set, you see the skeleton's done here, I'm going to go to Tool, and then in the Rigging sub-palette, I'm going to hit Bind Mesh. I'll then switch to the Rotate function, the Rotate tool, and turn my symmetry off. And by clicking on the link spheres, you notice I can now actually rotate my whole chain. By clicking on the Z-spheres themselves, I can rotate a single chain and do a little bit of a twist into the model. So this gives me a very fast binding. It's not 100% accurate. You'll see here if I wiggle it a little bit, it'll move parts maybe that I don't necessarily intend. But it does give me a very, very fast binding setup without too much technical know-how. I can get in here and essentially be very artistic with it very, very quickly. And even looking here in the feet and how complex I have for bending for these parts, surprisingly it holds up really well. So I'm pretty much just using the rotate tool, although you could use scale or move if you needed to change the size of a part of the character. But most of the time that's not going to happen with a joint chain, so we're just going to use rotate. You'll notice here as well, if I want to rotate the wrist or twist the wrist, I can do this by clicking on the Z-sphere itself. That'll actually bend all the way up the arm as well, just like you'd have a twist on the actual wrist. Notice if I bend the finger, just a single finger, all three fingers come with it. So I can use this to very quickly get that hand out of a static sort of flat hand pose. And of course, if I bend the head, the eyes will come with it. So when I'm done here with this pose, whatever this pose might be, I can go back to the Z plugin palette and go to the Transpose Master sub-palette and hit T-pose to sub-T, which will transfer the sculpt information back to my original subtools. And here that is. Here's the low poly. The cool part is if I go back up in my levels of resolution, here's the high poly, and all of that sculpt has transferred into the new pose. So I hope you enjoyed this video. For more, please visit andrewklein.net or kleinmakelearngood.com or youtube.com/slurpthegillman. Thank you.